The Vikings are one of the most well-known warrior societies in all of history. While popular culture often portrays them as horned helmet marauders, the reality is far more nuanced. The Vikings were skilled navigators, innovative engineers, shrewd traders, and yes, feared raiders. In this video, we will explore the world of the Vikings, a world that was both brutal and beautiful, both stark and complex. A Viking was a member of the seafaring Norse people who originated from the Scandinavian countries of Norway, Denmark, and Sweden between the late 8th and early 11th century. The rugged terrains and harsh climates of Scandinavia, characterized by its fjords, forests, and long winters, played a significant role in shaping the Vikings into skilled seafarers and resourceful people. The scarcity of usable farming land made agriculture a challenging endeavor, pushing these early Norse communities to look beyond their immediate surroundings for sustenance and opportunity. The sea, therefore, became a natural avenue for exploration, offering not just fish, but also the promise of untapped resources and lands. Often overlooked in favor of their military exploits, the Vikings had a thriving society with their own diverse traditions. At the core of this society was the family unit, organized around a patriarchal structure, but also offering significant roles for women. Unlike many other societies of their time, Viking women had a degree of freedom and could own property, initiate divorce, and even act as traders or artisans. This relative gender equality was a distinctive feature of Viking society and contributed to its resilience and adaptability. Social life was governed by a well-defined legal and ethical code, often formalized in assemblies known as things. These gatherings served as courts of law, where disputes were settled, alliances were formed, and important decisions were made. The Althing in Iceland, established in 930 AD, stands as the oldest surviving parliament in the world. Law and order were not imposed from above, but were communal responsibilities. The concept of honor was deeply ingrained in Viking society, influencing everything from interpersonal relationships to diplomatic treaties. To be dishonorable was to be ostracized, a fate often considered worse than death. Religion and spirituality were integral to Viking culture, providing not just a cosmological framework, but also ethical guidelines. The Norse pantheon, populated by gods like Odin, Thor, and Freya, was a complex system that explained the mysteries of nature and human existence. The Vikings believed that the universe was created from the body of the first being, Ymir, and that the world rested upon Yggdrasil, the world tree. This magical tree connected 9 mystical realms, including Asgard, home of the gods, and Midgard, home of humans. The stories of their religion usually focused on the central figures like Odin, the All-Father, Thor, the god of thunder, and Loki, the trickster god, who engaged in adventures that explored themes of power, honor, and betrayal. This religious framework was deeply intertwined with their social structure, legal systems, and even their motivations for exploration and warfare. The concept of Valhalla, the Hall of the Slain where warriors would feast and fight for eternity, provided a spiritual impetus for their daring exploits. Culturally, the Vikings were accomplished poets, storytellers, and artists. Skaldic poetry, a form of oral literature, was a highly respected art form, often used to praise heroes, narrate histories, and even insult enemies. The sagas, epic tales of heroes and gods, were not just entertainment, but also a form of historical record-keeping, passed down through generations. The Viking Age is generally considered to have commenced with the raid on the monastery at Lindisfarne in 793 AD, a shocking event that sent ripples throughout Christian Europe. In a lightning-fast attack, Viking raiders attacked the Christian monastery on the island off the northeast coast of England, looting its treasures and killing or capturing the monks who lived there. This raid was not an isolated incident, but rather the beginning of a series of expeditions that would see the Vikings venture far beyond their Scandinavian homelands. Lindisfarne was a watershed moment that signaled a new era of interaction between the Norse and the wider European continent. The Vikings, emboldened by their successful raids, began to look even further afield, setting their sights on distant lands and treasures. As the 9th century progressed, the Vikings continued to expand their reach. The year 865 AD marked another significant milestone with the arrival of the Great Heathen Army in England. Unlike earlier hit-and-run raids, this was a large, organized force with the intent of conquest. Over the next several years, they would capture significant territories, including the city of York, which they renamed Jorvik and turned it into a major trading center. This shift from raiding to ruling of cities like Jorvik demonstrated their ability to administer urban centers, collect taxes, and engage in trade, which is often overlooked in popular portrayals of Vikings as mere marauders. Around the same time, other Viking groups were sailing west across the Atlantic Ocean, leading to the discovery and colonization of Iceland in the late 9th century. Eric the Red, another famous Viking, founded the first Norse settlements in Greenland, even further west. The turn of the first millennium brought even more daring exploits. Around the year 1000 AD, Leif Erikson, the son of Eric the Red, is believed to have sailed to North America, predating Columbus by nearly 500 years. This voyage to what he called Vinland demonstrated the remarkable seafaring capabilities of the Vikings and their willingness to explore unknown territories. Meanwhile, in the east, Viking traders and warriors had penetrated as far as the Byzantine Empire and the Caspian Sea. They were motivated to do this by the wealth generated from trade in this region, including the buying and selling of slaves. Two famous Norse leaders, Rurik and Oleg, eventually established the Kievan Rus, a federation of Slavic tribes under Norse leadership. This state was a significant early player in Eastern European history and can be considered the forerunner to modern-day Russia, Ukraine, and Belarus. The Viking warriors even reached the Byzantine Empire, where they were hired as elite warriors, called the Varangian Guard, who served the Byzantine emperors. At the time that the Vikings began raiding, they had developed a sophisticated kind of ship that was unique to their culture, called the longship. The Viking longship was the cornerstone of Viking military strategy. These vessels could carry a crew of skilled warriors across vast distances and then swiftly land on enemy shores. The element of surprise was crucial. The Vikings often struck without warning, taking advantage of their ship's ability to navigate shallow waters to launch raids deep inland. In practice, Vikings preferred to attack locations close to the sea, as they were easy to reach. However, Viking warfare was not solely reliant on hit-and-run tactics. The Vikings were also capable of mounting more organized, large-scale operations. The Great Heathen Army that invaded England in 865 AD was a coalition of Viking warriors from different regions, united in their goal to conquer new territories. On the battlefield, Vikings employed a variety of tactics that showcased their adaptability and ingenuity. The shield wall was a common formation, where warriors would lock their shields together to create a nearly impenetrable barrier, behind which archers and spearmen could operate with relative safety. In close combat, Viking warriors wielded a range of weapons, from swords and axes to spears and bows. The berserkers, warriors who fought in a trance-like fury, added a psychological element to Viking warfare. Believed to be invincible and fearless, these warriors would often lead charges, striking terror into the hearts of their enemies. The Vikings were also pragmatic fighters who adapted their tactics based on the situation and the enemy they faced. When fighting in foreign lands, they often employed local guides and scouts, and they were quick to adopt new technologies and strategies that they encountered. Their military campaigns were not just exercises in brute force, but also involved strategic alliances, tribute collection, and even mercenary services. The Varangian Guard is the best example of this. Eventually, as the Vikings came into increasing contact with Christian Europe through raids, trade, and settlement, the seeds for cultural transformation were sown. The process of Christianization was neither swift nor uniform. It was a complex, multi-generational endeavor that varied from region to region. In some cases, conversion was a top-down process initiated by rulers who saw the strategic benefits of aligning with powerful Christian neighbors. Harald Bluetooth, the King of Denmark, was one such ruler who adopted Christianity and subsequently worked to convert his subjects. In other instances, conversion was more organic, influenced by intermarriage, trade relationships, or the work of Christian missionaries. Over time, as more Vikings adopted Christianity, new churches and even cathedrals were built, often on the very site where pagan temples once stood. Ultimately, the adoption of Christianity had far-reaching implications for Viking society. One immediate impact was the introduction of written language in the form of the Latin alphabet, which led to the recording of laws, histories, and eventually, the famous sagas. This was a significant departure from the oral traditions that had dominated Viking culture, offering new means of preserving knowledge and history. The Christianization process also led to changes in art, as the symbolism and iconography of Christianity began to appear in Viking crafts, manuscripts, and architecture. Crosses replaced Thor's hammers, and biblical scenes were depicted in artwork, signaling a profound shift in spiritual focus. Moreover, the adoption of Christianity facilitated the Vikings' integration into the broader European community. Most historians date the end of the Viking Age to AD 1066. One group of Vikings, called the Normans, had settled in France. The Normans eventually adopted French culture, language, and religion. By 1066, they were not much like the traditional Vikings. However, it was the Normans who invaded England and won the Battle of Hastings in 1066. If you would like to learn more about the Vikings and the Middle Ages, check out all of our free resources on the History Skills website. I look forward to seeing you again soon in our next video.